The screen fades from black. A cold wind howls across an endless stretch of pine forest. Snow falls in thick, silent layers over the wilderness. In the distance a flag flutters, not the familiar stars and stripes, but the Union Jack, bold against the white sky. A voice begins, low and deliberate. It was supposed to be an easy victory. A brief campaign that would expand a young nation's borders and secure its destiny. Instead, it became a war of confusion, pride, and forgotten heroism. The year was 1812, and the United States had just invaded Canada. The early 19th century world was in turmoil. Across the Atlantic, the Napoleonic Wars were raging. Britain was locked in a struggle for survival against Napoleon Bonaparte. Its armies spread thin across Europe. On the other side of the ocean, the young United States, barely 3 decades old, was growing restless under the shadow of its former colonial master. American merchants were furious. British warships patrolled the seas, intercepting American vessels, seizing cargo, and even forcing American sailors into service on British ships. In the eyes of Washington, it was humiliation, a violation of sovereignty that demanded a response. But beneath the surface, there was another motive, quieter yet powerful. Many American politicians, the so-called war hawks, believed that conquering Canada would be easy, even inevitable. Canada, still under British rule, was sparsely populated, its defenses scattered. The acquisition of Canada, one congressman boldly declared, will be a mere matter of marching. In June 1812, the United States declared war on Great Britain. But it was not the mighty British Isles they would first attack. It was their northern neighbor, the colony of Canada. The scene shifts to the American frontier, wooden forts, muddy roads, the smell of wet gunpowder. General William Hull, a veteran of the Revolution, leads an army north from Ohio toward the Detroit River. He is cautious, burdened by age and indecision. His men, poorly trained and poorly supplied, march through thick forests and swamps toward the border. Across the river, in the small British outpost of Amherstburg, the red-coated soldiers are few, barely 1,000 men, supported by Canadian militia and a powerful ally, the Shawnee leader Tecumseh. A fierce strategist and visionary, Tecumseh had spent years uniting indigenous nations to resist American expansion. To him, this was not Britain's war. It was a struggle for the survival of his people. In August 1812, Hull crosses into Canada, occupying the small town of Sandwich, now part of modern-day Windsor. But the invasion stalls almost immediately. Hull fears ambush, fears the dense wilderness, fears Tecumseh's warriors who vanish like shadows between the trees. Supplies run low, morale collapses, and British propaganda spreads panic among the Americans. Then, in a stunning reversal, British General Isaac Brock and Tecumseh cross the river and surround Fort Detroit. Brock's forces are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. But through deception and audacity, he convinces Hull that thousands of indigenous warriors are ready to strike. Terrified of a massacre, Hull surrenders his entire army without firing a shot. It is a humiliating defeat, and the first major victory for the British and their indigenous allies. From that moment, the War of 1812 becomes a strange, seesaw conflict fought along the borderlands of 2 worlds. Cities change hands. Battles flare and fade. At sea, American frigates win shocking victories against the Royal Navy, while on land, both sides suffer from disorganization, miscommunication, and bitter weather. In October, the charismatic Brock is killed at the Battle of Queenston Heights, but not before securing Canada's defenses. His death turns him into a national hero, the savior of Upper Canada. Tecumseh continues the struggle, leading his confederation across the Great Lakes, but his dream of a united indigenous homeland begins to die with every skirmish. By 1813, the tide shifts again. The Americans regroup, launching a series of new invasions. They capture York, today's Toronto, burning government buildings in retaliation for British raids. The fires scorch the earth, leaving behind a bitter legacy. Later, the British will return the favor, burning Washington, D.C. in 1814, setting the White House ablaze under a stormy sky. As the war drags on, the fighting grows more chaotic and personal. Farmers become soldiers, towns become battlegrounds, the frontier itself seems to bleed. On the banks of the Thames River in Ontario, Tecumseh is killed in battle, a loss mourned by both friend and foe. For the indigenous nations who fought beside Britain, his death marks the end of any hope for a sovereign homeland. Winter descends once more on the frozen border. Armies huddle in makeshift camps. Diplomats begin to whisper of peace. In Europe, Napoleon's empire crumbles, and Britain's attention turns back across the Atlantic. The two exhausted nations, the US and Britain, agree to meet in the neutral city of Ghent in modern-day Belgium. On December 24, 1814, the Treaty of Ghent is signed. The war ends not with victory or surrender, but with silence. The borders remain unchanged. No territory is gained, no clear triumph declared. But in that silence, nations begin to emerge. For the United States, the war becomes a story of resilience, a second war of independence that proves the Republic can stand against a world power. For Canada, it becomes a story of unity and survival, the moment when English and French settlers, alongside Indigenous allies, defended their land and forged an identity distinct from the Americans. The final scenes unfold like a painting, smoke drifting over a frozen battlefield, a lone soldier lowering a torn flag, a canoe gliding across a silent lake carrying the last remnants of a nation that fought for its home. The narrator's voice softens. The War of 1812 is often forgotten, overshadowed by grander conflicts, reduced to a footnote in textbooks. But beneath its chaos lies a deeper truth. It was a war fought not only with muskets and cannon, but with ideas of sovereignty, of identity, of belonging. It was the moment when the map of North America nearly changed forever. The camera lingers on the wilderness, the forests that once echoed with the thunder of battle. Slowly, the image fades to black. And perhaps, the voice concludes, the greatest victories are the ones that never redrew the lines on a map, but defined the spirit of a people. The final shot, a slow aerial pullback over the Great Lakes, sunlight glinting on the water. The distant echo of drums fades into silence.